At episode 12, let's go back to 7 episodes ago. It was at the time that Tygra, Panthro, Cheetara, and the two Snarks became Thundercubs for the first time. But before that could happen, well, the story begins with Mumm-ra's dream about him claiming the chest that has the treasures inside of it. Now remember, since 6 episodes ago, thank goodness for the Thundercats, they reclaimed the Book of Omens and most of the treasures themselves. So let's go back 7 episodes ago when once Mumm-ra had the chest itself, and for some unknown reason, the Sword of Omens came to life and pierced the gold chest. We also learned that 6 episodes ago, thanks to the Cave of Time, the five of them, the two Snarks, including Panthro, Cheetara, and Tygra, all became normal again. But in this case, only 3 of the Thundercats will become Thundercubs once again, but we'll get back to that later. So back with Mumm-ra, he woke up in his sarcophagus from that bad dream, and he's in the present in his tomb chamber of the Black Pyramid. The next thing Mumm-ra knew, he heard the voices of his ancient spirits of evil calling his name, and then said, "Can you hear us, Mumm-ra?" "Of course I hear you," Mumm-ra said. And of course, his ancient spirits of evil got upset with him. Well, the reason why the spirits of evil became upset because they just told Mumm-ra that they were running out of patience and they had reached their limit, and worst of all, Mumm-ra, according to them, is running out of time. So back with the spirits of evil, they told him, "Here is your mission. Go back to New Thundera and get the long lost treasures on Thundera before the good guys do. And if you succeed," the spirits of evil had told him further, "then we will win for sure, and that the Thundercats will be history," they said. But there's only one problem, according to Mumm-ra, when it's his turn to plead his case. He said that he had no idea where to find them. "Go find the fragment that goes with the golden chest itself," the spirits explained. "And when you do," the spirits went on further, "give it to Cheetara. She'll tell you where they are," they said. But according to Mumm-ra, there's a bigger problem. So he wanted to know how he's going to pull that off. How's he going to do it? Well, to answer that, the spirits of evil just told Mumm-ra, as of this moment, Chitara's on an expedition there on New Thundera right now. But we all know that she's not alone because Panthro and Tygra are with her at the moment too, but we'll get to that later. So the agent spirits of evil told him one last message. "Make sure you get there first, and when you do, you'll be there to greet her and her friends." So after that, Mumm-ra heads off. So anyway, back with Mumm-ra, he arrives to where the Mumm raft is. Now remember, just 11 episodes ago, that's how he used it to go back in time. So he and his canine pal will use the Mumm raft to get to New Thundera. So that's what they did. So meanwhile, at the Cat's Lair's hangar, there's Panthro, Cheetara, and Tygra now inside a feliner. And they have everything all set up and ready to go. So the feliner heads off to New Thundera. In the control room, watching it happen on screen were Lionel, Snarf, and Mumm-ra. Now Lionel has a reason to be depressed because he should have been with them. So, to make Lionel feel better, that's when Snarf says, "Oh, cheer up. I'm sure Cheetara, Panthro, and Tygra can take care of themselves." So even though Lionel agrees with him and said that is true, but there are other new places on New Thundera, according to Lionel, that hasn't been explored yet. Also, Lionel pleaded the case, and he's not kidding, that most missions like that are very dangerous. So meanwhile on New Thundera, so there's Mumm-ra and Mumm-ra, his sidekick. Now you're probably, what would they be doing in the ruins of the pyramid? Now remember, that's the same pyramid that fell apart since 6 episodes ago. So all Mumm-ra has to do is to, with the spirits of evil's power, that he can set it up once everything's all set. So now that it is, good news for Mumm-ra, who found one of the statue's heads. So it's now up to Mumm-ra to do the rest. So one of the first things that Mumm-ra did was to tell his spirits of evil to set up the cauldron first. So that's what he did. So the 4 statues went first, and then his cauldron, and then his sarcophagus, and everything else. So what Mumm-ra did is that he built a grotto of his own, which is his new hideout at the moment anyway. So back with Mumm-ra, now that everything's all set, one of the first things he did was to look in the cauldron. And what he saw was the exact same gold chest that the Sword of Omens had pierced since 7 episodes ago. So, what was Mumm-ra's plan? Well, he told his sidekick Mumm-ra that the first thing they'll find is the fragment that goes along with it. That is, if they could find it. So now that both Mumm-ra and his canine pal had left the grotto, what's left for them to do is find that missing fragment that goes to the chest. Well, good news for Mumm-ra, he actually finds it, and he gives it to his pal, Mumm-ra. So now that both Mumm-ra and Mumm-ra, thanks to their teamwork, they found the missing fragment that goes to the gold chest. But when Mumm-ra looked over his shoulder, he sees a flea liner that's flying by. So in the flea liner were Cheetara, Panthro, and Tygra, and they needed a place to land. But before they did so, that's when Cheetara says, "Wait a minute." Now Chitara can tell that something was off. So, although she isn't sure, but she told Panthro and Tygra that they should get a better look to investigate a little further. So that's what they did. So Chitara even says that they should keep their eyes peeled because this is not a good time for an ambush. And wouldn't she realize she was soon proven right? Because she didn't notice, and neither were Panthro or Tygra, that Mumm-ra was there, and so is his canine pal. So what Mumm-ra did is that he took out his sword of plunder, just like what any bad guy would do, and uses the sword's power to attack the feliner. Well, Chitara was proven right, and has indeed an ambush attack. So meanwhile, back on Third Earth and at the Cat Slayer's control room, Lionel not only heard the alarm going off, but his sword told him that there was something wrong. So just like what any good guy would do, he looked through his sword's eye to tell him what happened. So he did. And what he saw was unbelievable. The feliner's out of control. That's because they were earlier being attacked by the Sword of Plondar thanks to Mumm-ra, who was also there. If that's not bad enough, the feline was going to crash. Lino knew back in the control room after looking through his sword's eye that this is a serious situation. So Snarf went first to speak in this case to say, "I knew something bad's going to happen." Then Pumira shows up and told Lionel that there's a bigger problem. There's not a spaceship available that could rescue them and to pick them up. But aha, that doesn't mean that Lionel has a plan. So what was Lionel's plan? He made himself a case. He said there is indeed one spaceship that could take them, and that would be the Red Star. So back on New Thundera with Cheetara, Tygra, and Panthro, now that the feliner has crashed and there's no way that they could fix it, so they took all the equipment that they need. Gravity boots, thermal suits, and infrared goggles. Of course, Panthro made a compliment to Cheetara on how nice of a landing it looks. The feliner, that is. So Tygra had pleaded his case to say it's going to take a lot of fixing up for the feliner to fly again, he said. So even though Chitara agrees with Tygra but didn't plead her case, let's just hope that Lionel will figure out how to rescue us and real soon. But in the meantime, until he does, our mission will go on as planned, she said. So Chitara told everyone to put on their gravity boots, in which they did. But what they didn't know is that meanwhile back at the grotto, watching them in the cauldron was Mumm-ra. So Mumm-ra knows what to do. He does what any bad guy would do. Asked his ancient spirits to disguise him as the Fog of Despair. So that's what he did. So now the Fog of Despair, known as Mumm-ra, is on his way. Back on Third Earth in that Castle Plondor, so, Monkey and other mutants that was inside of the castle, he had just arrived at the castle's control room. He just told Sly, the leader, and Volterman that Lionel's on his way to the castle, and so is Snarf. But at first Volterman dismisses him and said that's impossible and then claims his case to say that he must have lost his mind. But when Volterman turns on the screen, he knew that what Monkey said was true. It's Lionel and Snarf on their way to the castle. It was during that conversation that Snarf went first to plead his case to Lionel to say, "I don't know if this is a good idea. The mutants can't be trusted," he said. "They'll double cross us anyway." Well, even if that were the case, Lionel says, he said that there was no other way and that the restaurant is the only way that can take them to New Thundera. So Snarf says that he has a better suggestion, that he and Lionel should borrow the ship instead. But Lionel dismisses it and says, "No way, we're not thieves, because if we did that, it'll violate the code of Thundera itself," he said. But Lionel and Snarf were not aware that meanwhile in the castle's control room, overhearing that conversation were the mutants. So Voltman went first to speak over in the PA system of the control room of the castle. He said, "Hold it right there, Lionel. If you come any closer, I'll blow you and your friend to smithereens." So Lionel says, "Relax. We come in peace. We're here to borrow your spaceship," he said. Sly, the leader of the moon, sensed that something was off. He told Voltman, "He's bluffing. Let's blast him." "Wait a minute," Voltman said. "Let's help him and his friend get to New Thundera," he suggested. That was after Lionel had pleaded a case to say that the mutants will be paid once they get there. Sly just asked the question of Ultraman, "Have we lost our minds? Us helping the Thundercats? We must be crazy to think we're going to help them." "That's true," Ultraman says, "but you're just as bad as I am." So, Volterman has a plan to discuss with Slyth and Monkey. He says, "Listen, here's what we'll do, and we'll have a better opportunity than that. So, once we take Lionel and Snarf to New Thundera and the rest are but on the way inside of deep space, we can just get rid of them all at once," he suggested. So, after thinking it over, Monkey went next to speaking his case to Volterman to say, "That's a splendid idea." So back on New Thundera and with the three Thundercats that are in their anti-gravity boost, we have Cheetara, Tygra, and Panthro. And that's when Panthro said to his friends, "Keep a lookout. The pyramid that was in ruins is around somewhere," he said. So once the Thundercats had arrived to where the pyramid was, they found it weird it was deserted. Cheetara must have suspected that someone had attacked them, but the problem is who? Well, according to Panthro, although he agrees with Cheetara that someone had attacked him, but that's what he was about to find out, and so were Tygra and Cheetara. So off they went. But what the Thundercats didn't even realize that meanwhile back in the grotto, remember Mumm-ra? He just turned himself into the fog of despair in the skies. So he pleaded himself a case that he sensed that the Thundercats are somewhere nearby. And then he also pleaded a case to say it was time to meet their doom. So off he went. So back with the Thundercats now that they've made it to the ruins of the pyramid, but they sensed that something was off. So Chitara told her friends, "I think we're in serious trouble." So Panther, who agrees with Chitara, and then says, "Well, what are we waiting for? Let's get out of here." And so they did. Then Panthro told his friends while he stopped, "Keep going. I'll try to hold it off." But unfortunately, he was no match for the Fog of Despair, so he was first to go. Back with Chitara and Tiger, they're trying to go faster and faster to avoid it, but they're no match either. So all three of the Thundercats are trapped in the Fog of Despair, and guess where it's taking them? Remember the Canyon of Youth? Because that was the first time that the five Thundercats had become Thundercubs since 7 episodes ago. So anyway, that's where Panthro, Tygra, and Cheetara are going, thanks to the Fog of Despair. That they should have known it was Mumm-ra in disguise. So back with the Fog of Despair, that was really Mumm-ra in disguise, which the three Thundercats should have seen coming and dropped them off at the Cannon of Youth. He says, "Well, you may have experienced your childhood the first time. Now it's time for you to experience it the second time." He's not kidding because look what happened. Tygra, Panthro, and Cheetara have become Thunder Cubs again for the second time, as I mentioned it earlier. So back with Mumm-ra, now that he knows that step one of the plan has already worked, now it's time for step two. So what he first did was to ask his spirits of evil to give him another disguise, Lionel, the leader of the Thundercats. So that's what he did. So back with the Thundercubs, Cheetara, Tygra, and Panthro, now that they have become children for the second time, although they had no idea just moments ago what had happened, that's when they saw Lionel, or so they thought. So even though the Thundercubs had no idea, so young Panthro went first to ask a question of who he is. Well, the fake Lionel, first of all, had introduced himself. And second of all, he just told the Thundercubs, "You're going to come with me on an important mission," he said. So young Panthro says, "Really? And why should we?" Well, the fake Lionel explains in his case, and he said a fake Thundercat imposter might try to steal the treasures themselves, he said. Or so what the Thundercubs thought. The fake Lionel also says that all we had to do is prevent this from happening, then shows young Cheetara a fragment that came from a gold chest. He says, "Here, take a look at it. Now, with this fragment, you can show us where the rest of the treasures are located," he suggested. Well, the young Cheetara went next to speak in their case to ask a question. "What do you mean?" Well, that made the fake Lionel upset and says, "Just do it." Well, the two Thundercats sensed that something was off, but we'll find out later. And that's when Tygra says, "Hey, wait a minute. You had no right to speak to her like that." Then the young Cheetara says, "Take it easy," she said. So finally, young Cheetara agrees and says, "But I think you've lost your mind," she said. So Cheetara went ahead and concentrated while focusing on a fragment. So she says, "As a matter of fact, maybe I'll know where it is. It's just right above these hills," she said. So the fake Lionel told the Thundercubs, "Well, what are we waiting for? Let's do this." So they all head off. Meanwhile, Lionel and Snarf had boarded the rat star, and it had just moments ago left Castle Plondor and from Third Earth. Now, inside the rat star were the three mutants, Monkey and Slide, the leader of the mutants, and Vultureman. So one of the first things that Snarf did was to tell Lionel this case. "Now you stay close to me and everything will be fine. And whatever you do, don't ever drop your guard, not even for a second." "Don't worry, Snarf," Lionel said. "I won't." Oh, I forgot to mention that everyone's in the control room of the rat store. So anyway, Voltron was whispering to Monkey to say, "I think it's a good idea to check the anti-gravitational controls," he said. So Monkey heads off. So long story short, Slide and Monkey were arguing about which control goes where and etc. So that means it's now up to Snarf to take care of it. So he decided to take matters in his own hands to help the mutants a little. But it proved to be a big mistake. But then, by surprise, when Slide grabs Snarf, that's when Lionel tells him, "Let him go." Now remember, Lionel said, "You promised to take us to New Thundera. Is this how you mutants keep your word?" Well, to answer Lionel's question, that's when, by surprise, that's when Voltman says no. "But this weapon that I built will." So he zapped Lionel, Voltman that is. So long story short, meanwhile on New Thundera with the Thundercubs and the fake Lino, well, Chitara says there's something from nearby. The fake Lino wanted to know from the Thundercubs, "What are you stopping for?" According to young Chitara, she says there's something very nearby, she said. "Where?" the fake Lino asked. "It's somewhere near here," the young Chitara said. "Well, what are you waiting for? Dig for it," the fake Lionel said. So meanwhile, back on the rat store, Lionel and Snarf were thrown inside of the chamber because of the mutants. So Lionel's pretty much all tied up at the moment, and as for Snarf, he made his threat clear to the mutants to say, "As soon as I set Lionel free, you're all gonna pay and etc." So the mutants went back to the control room while Lionel and Snarf were all by themselves in the chamber. So back with Snarf, he couldn't help but think to himself, how would he and Lionel get out of this mess? So he went over to Lionel, who was tied up at the moment. He says, "Hang on, Lionel, I'll get you out of here." And so that's what he did. So after Snarf sets him free, Lionel stands up. That's because Lionel broke free first. So he thanks Snarf for saving him when he did. So Snarf has his turn to plead his case to say, "There's nothing to thank me for. We're never getting out of here anyway. Because there's just no way," he said. Then Snarf says that there's a bigger problem. This room that we're in right now is soundproof. There's no way you can call your sword from outside he said. Well, Snarf also pleaded a case to say it's his fault for helping these creepy mutants in the first place, and he also said if he hadn't have done that, then himself and Lionel wouldn't be in this mess. But then Lionel saw something very interesting. He says, Snarf, over here, quick. So Snarf says, what is it? Even though Lionel said that he isn't sure, but aha, Lionel says that he has a plan. He says, whatever behind the panel is, we can use it, he said. So after Lionel removes the panel, it's the stabilizer controls. And he had a thought. If he can use the stabilizer controls on the Restor, that would really throw the mutants off for a loop, he thought. So Lionel suggested to Snarf to say, if that dirty trick had got us into this mess, maybe this dirty trick can get us out of this, he said. So guess what he did? He used the stabilizer controls. So long story short, in the Restor's control room, the three mutants that were there, Slide, the leader of the mutants, Voltron, and Monkey, had panicked. And the reason why they're panicking is because they didn't know that someone had sabotaged the stabilizer control, and we know who that someone is, none other than Lionel. One of the first things that the ship did is that it turned upside down first. So they're now up on the ceiling of the ship, the three mutants, that is. Then when Lionel used the wires of the controls of the stabilizer again, the ship this time went right side up, and so did the sword. And by surprise, the doors opened. So good news for Lionel Snart. They finally made it out of that chamber. Lionel not only got his sword back, that's also the good news. And speaking of the mutants, now that they're on the floor, that's when Snarf approached him and says, do you want to take another spin? Well, anyway, back on New Thundera and the three Thundercubs. Well, Cheetara, good news for her, she found something all right, but it's not a chest, it's something else. The object she found was the Mirror of Truth, another one of the treasures of Thundera. But before the fake Lionel could find out what it is, oh, by the way, he's there too. So he was asking young Cheetara to hand it over, and that's when the real Lionel, who shows up in the nick of time, he says, not so fast. The Thundercubs didn't realize this yet, but that Lionel they were guided to was a fake. Then the real Lionel just let slip to the fake Lionel that the mirror truth that young Cheetara had found, it really belongs to the Thundercats, he said. Also, the real Lionel just let slip that he had seen the mirror of truth in the Book of Omens, just a moment earlier, right before he left. Now, Snarf, however, pleaded his case after he stepped forward to look at Panthro, Cheetara, and Tygra. He says, oh my goodness, you're Thundercubs again, he said. Well, the fake Lionel started to plead his case to the Thundercubs to say, there he is, that's the imposter I told you about, he said. Then Snarf has his turn to tell the fake Lionel, hey, watch who you call an imposter, he said. Then the fake Lionel started to plead his case to say, don't listen to Snarf and that they're the imposters and etc. The Thundercubs were confused. Now they're left to wonder which one's the real Lionel and which one's the fake one. Well, Snarf was about to step forward, but then Lionel says, wait a minute. Then the real Lionel started to plead a case with Snarf to say, I don't want the Thundercubs to stand between the phony Lionel and myself, he said. Instead, Lionel has an idea to tell the Thundercubs to say, listen, if you can look inside the mirror of truth for yourselves, then we'll see who's who, he suggested. So young Chitara was first to look through the mirror of truth, and what she saw was unbelievable. She saw herself only older. Then young Tygra was next. He saw himself in the mirror of truth, only older as well, just like what young Chitara did. So even though the young Tygra says that he doesn't understand, but one of the Lionels had been lying to him. So, by surprise, when the young tiger points at the fake Lionel and suspected that he's the imposter, that made the fake Lionel upset and said to young Cheetara, give me that mirror! So after the fake Lionel snatches the mirror of truth away, well, the real Lionel knows what to do. He did what any good guy would do, summon the Thundercat signal from his sword, so that's what he did. So what the Thundercat signal did was unbelievable. It knocks out the fake Lionel. And thanks to that, combined with the mirror of truth, the Thundercubs became Thundercats once again for the second time. Panthro, Cheetara, and Tygra. So now the mirror of truth went back to Cheetara in her hands, of course, but then the fake Lionel has a surprise for them. He says, "Not a bad trick, but let me show you mine." And right in front of the three Thundercats that just went back to normal, thanks to the mirror of truth, that's when they should have realized right then the fake Lionel was Mumm-ra in disguise. They should have known. So after Mumm-ra had pleaded his case to say the game's not over and etc., he takes out the sword of plunder, just like what any bad guy would do. So, just like what any bad guy would do, Mumm-ra uses his power from the sword of plunder. But thanks to Cheetara and the Mirror of Truth who stood in front of them, the sword's power went back at Mumm-ra himself. So thanks to the Mirror of Truth's power, Mumm-ra went back to his mummified self again, and he begged and pleaded for the Thundercats to forgive him. But then Mahmud, who was his psychic, came up out of nowhere and took Mumm-ra back to his pyramid. So Snarf, who saw what had happened, he says, "Lionel, stop him! He's getting away!" he said. "We can't, Snarf," Lionel said, and he just pleaded his case to say that revenge won't do them any good, them being the Thundercats, that is. And of course, there's a saying, revenge was never an answer to begin with. It only satisfies the evil spirit, especially Mumm-ra's, he said. So back with Mumm-ra, who was on his way back to the pyramid, and along with his canine psychic, he told the Thundercats that he will make them pay for what they did and etc. He also said, "You'll see, I'll have my revenge." Then Snarf has his turn to plead his case to Mumm-ra as he was flying away. "Oh yeah? Well, we got one too," he said. So after that, the Thundercats win once again. So back with the wreck of the Feliner, luckily it'll be all fixed up thanks to the parts from the rat store. Oh, and as for the mutants, they're all tied up at the moment while the repair was taking place. So, long story short, after Chitara had pleaded a case with the good news that the feliner will be operational in a couple of hours, that's when Slide went first to plead his case to Volgerman to say, I must be the dumbest mutant of all time because every time we come up with a scheme, but Volgerman interrupts him and then pleads his case to say, "Oh, stop complaining." Also, as Volgerman says in his case, to have Slide help him prevent the Thundercats from leaving them behind. So Monkeyman has his turn to ask a question. They wouldn't do that, would they? And that's when Snarf heard that, he told the mutants, "Well, that depends," he said. Well, good news for the feliner now is it's all fixed up and ready to go. That's when the mutants said all at once to say, "Don't leave us behind and we'll behave," and etc. So when all of the Thundercats came back, that's when Lionel says, "Good news, mutants. As much as it pains me against my judgment, we'll take you all back to Third Earth because Snarf had convinced me to. And of course, even better, there's a room just for you. But it's not very comfortable. That's more what you deserve anyways," he said. And so everybody left New Thundera and headed to Third Earth with a new treasure on the list, the Mirror of Truth. So that ends episode 12.